Hello, you guys know who it is? John the YouTube mechanic. This time we have a 2015 Nissan Murano. And we are looking at the front brakes and how to replace them. Obviously you want to make sure your brakes are bad. First thing you want to do is take your wheel off. The lug should be 21 for the wheel. And to take off the caliper, not the brake bracket, but the caliper, this thing, it's a 17 millimeter. And as you can see, let me see if I can get my flashlight here. You can see that this rotor is, it's pretty much done. So we're probably gonna replace rotors and brake pads. So first you're gonna take your tire off, then your brake caliper. Then you're gonna wanna take your brake bracket off, which I believe it's a 7/8. You might wanna double check that, make sure it fits right. Take the caliper or the bracket off and leave that to the side. You're gonna wanna grease your pins. Take these out, kind of pull the back of the thing, this cover, pull it out, put grease on the slidey part only. Don't overdo it, just put a good amount in there. Put this back on. And then once you have your other rotor, put the new rotor on first. Because this is pretty easy, brakes are easy, they're pretty much the same for all cars. So first take the tire off, then your bracket, caliper, then your bracket. Take your bracket off, take your rotor off. You might want to hit it, put a lug nut, one of the lugs from the tire. Just thread it on here a couple times, that way it doesn't go flying. Put some WD-40 around here if you have to and just hit it. If you're replacing it, you can use a metal hammer, it won't matter. And this one's already loose, so we're kind of lucky. But yeah, that's basically it. So once you have your new rotor, you put the new rotor on first, followed by the bracket. I recommend changing the slider guide, these brackets right here. You should replace them at the very minimum, clean them up with a wire brush. So yeah, that's basically it. I'll walk you guys through the install, but this is just the removal part. And I'll walk you guys through that. I'll walk through the whole thing, that way it's thorough video. But first thing you want to do before you start really putting this thing back together, you want to make sure you have the right rotor and pads. So what you're going to want to do is stand up the other rotor. I can't do it with my other hand, but if I had the other rotor, I would stand them up and I would line them up like this. So like that, it's an exact fit. Make sure if it's single or if it has double walls or double fin, whatever you want to call it. So make sure that one's not a single and one's a double, because sometimes they'll be different. But just make sure that's right. So check the rotor, make sure your pads are exactly the same thing. Sometimes you'll have an inner and outer pad wear. Just look, it'll say inner or it'll say outer. Sometimes also, a good rule of thumb, some of these will have the squealer. Generally, you want the squealer on the inside, because the inside is over here, closest to the motor and stuff would be the inside. So you would want the squealer part to be on the inside bottom. Usually that's where they go. So if everything's right, pads and rotor, what you might want to do now is push the backing plate back a little bit. This one was actually revving, but it's a good rule of thumb just to do that. So just push on it, push it back. All right, so then our caliper's off. You're gonna want to replace the slider brackets, these things. If you don't have new ones, go ahead and at least clean it with a wire brush. Some of these can be a little bit hard to put back on, especially these big long ones. The little individual ones are more easier to replace. But just bend the little tab that's in the middle. Just like a little tab. So you're gonna want to bend it up and that way when it goes down, it pinches it. If that doesn't work, try to push it down. Pretty sure if you push it towards that way, towards down, I guess it would be. Just that way it clips on better. But if not, at least clean the mating surface, like right there, in between there, with the wire brush. And then you're gonna wanna grease these pins with brake caliper grease. Like I said, slide the little dust cover off, pull these out, put some grease on the slidey part only. And only these slider pins, only. Do not put the grease on anything threaded. Do not. So what you're gonna wanna do now is get your rotor, and you're gonna wanna clean it with some brake clean. You're gonna spray it one side, pretty good. And then the other side, this is just showing you. You can see this rotor is pretty messed up. So spray both sides of the new rotor because there's like oil on there. And what'll happen is you'll get the new pads and it will leave a residue. And trust me, it'll make noise and it won't be good. So once you verified you have the right parts, you greased your slider pins, you changed your hardware, you can go ahead and put your rotor on, the new one. Like I said, make sure to clean it off with brake clean. Put it on there, and I'll go from there. Kind of walk you through it. Rotor, put on there. Now you're gonna want to put your brake bracket. It'll only go on one way. Make sure you don't put the wrong one on the wrong side. But generally speaking, it follows the curve, and the bolts will line up. It'll correspond with the threaded part, as you can see there. So put this on there. Tighten it down. Do not use an impact. You should torque these to spec. It would be the bolts that are for the caliper to the knuckle. So check your car's specifications for that. But if all else fails, tighten them pretty snug. If you do with impact, you have a chance of over tightening it. It would seem tight, then it becomes loose because you over tighten it and it's hard to feel with the gun. So I'll run it in with the gun until it's, as soon as it hits, I don't do no more, and then I hand tighten it with the breaker bar. But generally speaking, put the rotor on and your bracket. So once you got your bracket on there, you have your two bracket bolts torqued to the knuckle, steering knuckle. Put your pads on. There's tabs, so you're gonna want to push this down, and then as you're starting to push this one down, start to turn the pad and so like that, and push it in there. Make sure that it's actually in there like that. Pushing this little arm down. It shouldn't be above it, it should be below it, like this right here. So do that on both sides. Make sure you put them on the right way. It's the flat, more straighter part goes on the outside, the curve goes on the inside. Because think about it, it's like this. So it can actually rotate. If you put it on the wrong way, it's not going to be good. Generally speaking, you should see these two lines out like that. Just make sure that's good. So yeah, those are tight. Got your rotor on. You got the pads on there. Okay. Now the caliper. We have to press in the pistons. So get your tool. You should have a tool for this, especially when it comes to these dual pistons. You need that tool. So compress these. Try to go slow. It'll avoid. It should avoid the master cylinder overfilling if you do it slow. Like I have a ratcheting tool, so I ratchet down. Wait, ratchet down. Usually though, if you really want to do it, you're supposed to drain a little bit of the brake fluid, suck some out, not a lot. That way when you do this step, it doesn't come out of there. I don't want to confuse you. So if you're pressing this and you see fluid jumping down, don't worry about it. It's because you're pressing this down and now we are basically done. Now you're gonna want to put your caliper on there. make sure that this hose is straight. Push it out and just make sure it has no twist in it. You want this nice and straight. Tighten these. I always like to hold the inside. It's a 22, and you hold this, and then tighten the nut for the caliper. Sometimes you have to do that anyways, but I do it as a rule of thumb because if you do it this way, you know it's tight. So yeah, and that's about it. Still double check everything. Still double check the inside nut. Check this. Double check your pads are the right way. Put your wheel on, torque those, and that's about it. If you did remove some of the brake fluid, top it off. If you didn't, I would check it anyways. Before you check the fluid, once you're all done, I would press the brake a couple times because your calipers are open. So before you go to drive, make sure to press the brake a couple times. It'll be soft and it'll get hard, and it should stay hard. Shouldn't have any issues. And then go ahead and drive the car, make sure it doesn't feel funny, and that's about it. Just be really careful with brakes. They're easy, but they're a safety issue. If you mess it up, it's the brakes. It won't be good for you, it won't be good for the person you did it for. If you're at work and you're doing this, you know, be careful. That's why I always double check. Even though I've done this countless of times, I still double check everything. But that's about it. Like I said, double check the fluid when you're all done. Make sure all the bolts and nuts are tight. Make sure your tire's tight. And then press the brake pedal a couple times. Check the fluid. If it's all good, check it for a drive. That's how you do brakes on a Nissan Murano. And very similar to almost every car, but I guess everyone will be a little bit different.